For those unfamiliar, welcome to the world of the 12-team playoff. Memphis has a much better chance of getting into the playoff than Oklahoma State. Neither one is going to make the playoff. Do I like Memphis this year? Yes, I do. Seth Hennigan at quarterback, good football player. Their roster, one of the best in the entire G5. You know what I can't get by with Memphis? The fact that they have a brutally tough schedule. It just doesn't work out really well. They are going to have to be road warriors if they want to get to college football playoff. I still think that's more likely than a decently popular preseason Big 12 championship game appearance pick at the very least in Oklahoma State, who I'm going to kind of rag on for a few minutes, and then much like Iowa in the Big 10, pick them to go, 8-4. So here's how Memphis' schedule plays out. They have to go at Florida State. I know Florida State isn't as good as some of you thought they were. Heck, I didn't think they were a national title contender, but I didn't think they were losing to Georgia Tech either. I think they'll rebound, stabilize in the next couple weeks. They'll be able to beat Memphis. Who can push them? Mike Norvell and company, you got to be careful. When you have a good roster, a proven head coach, a program that has legitimate playoff aspirations coming off a 10-win season, and you've got a guy like Seth Hennigan at quarterback, you got to be careful. You got to be careful. But that's going to be a loss for Memphis. Now, here are 3 road games. They have 3 road games. This is why it's going to be hard, because remember, Memphis has to be the highest ranked Group of 5 conference champion. So they have to win the American, which they could absolutely do. But there are other teams that are going to be in the running, and there's a world where they play well, they have a good season, and they don't even make the American Conference championship game. Because the last week of the regular season, they have to go at Tulane. And in the midst of that regular season, they have to go at UTSA. Those are their 2 biggest threats to win the American Conference this year. And oh, by the way, they also have to go at South Florida. I wouldn't sleep on that game. That's the same South Florida program that just routed a Power 4 program in a bowl game last year in Syracuse, which I'm not saying it makes them a world beater, but on the road, that's a tough trio of American Conference road games. That's about as tough as it gets. There is a real world where the last week of the regular season determines who goes to the American Conference championship game and who has a chance to make it to the college football playoff. Because Memphis, I think they're going to end the year 9-3. I think between those 3 road games that I listed, they lose 2 of them because they're just tough opponents. But if they win all 3, yeah, they're cooking. They'll be cooking with gas. If they're good enough to win all 3, they'll go at least 10-2, maybe even 11-1. But I think Memphis with this schedule ends up at 9-3. I think they lose to Florida State, and I think they lose 2 of those road games against good teams. But if they're able to win 2 of them instead, they wind up 10-2. They'll go to the American Conference championship game in all likelihood and have a real chance to get into the college football playoff, which is an easier path than what Oklahoma State has to deal with. And one note on that Tulane matchup, from what I've read recently, Tulane doesn't have their starting quarterback yet. They've got kind of a 2 or 3-way battle. Oregon former 5-star recruit Ty Thompson has not won the job yet. He could win it, but there are other guys down there. I won't be surprised if that's a Malachi Nelson situation like at Boise State, who could be a Group of 5 champion and get into the playoff, and you end up not having the big-time recruit be the starting quarterback. But we shall see. So Memphis, I think, winds up at 9-3, but their path to being 10-2 in the regular season, and by extension 11-2, if they win the American and being the highest-ranked G5, yeah, it's a better path to the playoff than what Oklahoma State has. So I am down on Oklahoma State in comparison to those who pick Oklahoma State to get to the Big 12 championship game, to win the Big 12. I don't think they are in that discussion. I do not believe that Oklahoma State can win the Big 12 with Alan Bowman at quarterback. This is the best quarterback conference in the entire country. It is crazy deep. I know you've got a veteran offensive line. I know Ollie Gordon is great. I know there are a lot of returners there. But guess what? There are a lot of returners on a team that I wasn't overly impressed with last year. Just like Iowa, they're bringing back a decent amount of their team from a year ago, and guess what? They're just a team. They're good. They can beat teams at the top, but they can lose the teams at the bottom too. But at the end of the season, they're going to wind up with a really, really high floor because of their head coach. Mike Gundy is really good. He's always been really good. And Kirk Ferentz at Iowa is really good. They're both really fantastic coaches that don't bottom out. They don't crater. But I don't see this as being a conference championship team. So Oklahoma State, I think they end the year 8-4. I think they lose 1 game at home and 3 on the road. I think they lose at home to Utah. Now that game is going to come down to who wins the ground game. Can Ollie Gordon be established? If not, Alan Bowman's not going to carve up a Kyle Whittingham Utah defense. That's not going to happen. It just isn't. If they can run the ball, okay, perhaps it is possible. Utah's a better team. Utah's got the better quarterback. I think Utah's got as good or a better roster than Oklahoma State. And by the way, what's an advantage Oklahoma State often has? Well, you got Mike Gundy. Well, you got Kyle Whittingham on the other side, who's one of the best coaches in all of college football. I'll take the Utes to win that game. The other 3 losses for Oklahoma State: at Kansas State. That's a good team on the road. I lean towards the home team unless you give me a compelling reason, such as Cam Rising, Alan Bowman. I'll take Cam Rising. I think Avery Johnson is going to have a solid year. I don't think he's Offensive Player of the Year in the Big 12 or a first-team guy or anything like that, but I think that ground game can match what Oklahoma State can do. That's going to be a physical football game. That is going to be a physical football game. So is the Utah game, just to be clear. But that Oklahoma State at Kansas State game, that's going to be physical. I think they lose that game. I think they lose at TCU. TCU is a sleeper team in the Big 12. Everyone's overlooking them because they went to the national championship game, got blown out, and then went 5-7. Got a new defensive coordinator. Sonny Dykes is still a good offensive coach. And you're playing in Fort Worth. I think that's a game Oklahoma State absolutely loses. And if you disagree with any of these metrics, I present to you that this program, a lot of these players lost games to far worse teams last year. Far worse teams. So I'm on Kansas State and TCU being losses. And then get this, last week of the regular season, Oklahoma State's going to be sitting there at 8-3, and Colorado is going to be 5-6, playing for bowl eligibility. And that Boulder crowd spurs them on to a win. I think you have a more explosive offense. I don't quite know what to expect from Oklahoma State's defense. Feels like it kind of goes up and down on a year-to-year basis. They should be good. They should be good. But do they have the horses offensively to keep up with what Colorado's capable of? Because if Colorado's offensive line is just okay, they're going to be scoring at least 24 to 30 points in this game. At least. I know that was kind of a big range. I'll rephrase. 28 to 30 points is what they'll score. Can Oklahoma State do that on the road in Boulder? I don't expect Colorado's defense to be great. I do expect them to be better. So, Memphis and Oklahoma State will be on the outside looking in of the college football playoff when the year comes to a close. Memphis because of their schedule, and Oklahoma State because I just don't buy them. I do not buy the Cowboys. Go prove me wrong, Mike Gundy, by all means. Memphis 9-3, Oklahoma State 8-4 when this year comes to a close.